Y'all ready for this? Welcome to Sports Kid Drama Kid. I'm Jim. I'm the Sports Kid.
I'm Andi. I'm the Drama Kid. I don't know where to look. Do I look at you?
Yeah, we'll look at each other this time. So we're set up in our back room.
We are.
And this is all coming out of the fact that we have to go to a wedding and we're out of town and it's the end of the summer, getting crazy here. So we wanted to do something to put out as an episode, but still make it a little easier on ourselves. So
I feel like we've been kicking this around for a little bit where, you know, we will happily realize that there are people we don't know listening to the podcast, which is amazing. And we're so grateful for it. But I think the thing we marvel at is like, we're not anybody. Neither of us is famous or like known for a particular thing. I mean, in very small
yeah, like in
circles.
Chicago, we've done improv and stuff, which we'll get into. But we don't have like any sort of profile as podcasters yet.
Yeah.
Like we're building that from the ground up. So we're like, why not do a narcissistic navel gaze into who we are so that you can really join in the whatever they call that relationship that people have.
Parasocial?
Yes. Parasocial relationship.
I have a lot of parasocial
But that's a cynical way of looking at it. The other way is just like, introducing everyone to us and like even getting into some stuff that like we haven't heard about each other or we have but haven't really like heard the whole story, and just sort of for everyone to catch up on our lives. Like as you'll see, we've gone through some stuff, and like probably there are people in our lives or people just listening to this for the first time, if you're new, that would want to just like know where we're coming from, so then you can move forward with our fun podcast.
Don't worry, it's not gonna get
no
too intense. But yeah, no, just who we are and why. Also, like this came out, one of your favorite, you were an early listener of Mark Maron.
Yep.
And we were joking around of like, why don't we just like marry each other? And I also was like, I've always wanted to be like a podcast girly. Like I get to sit like crisscross applesauce in like comfy clothes. Not that I wear comfy clothes when we record the podcast anyway, but like I've never gotten to do like this format with you.
Yeah, so we're going to marry each other. And I'm going to start with interviewing Andi about her life. And like, you know, in the way that I've pretty much just picked up from being a journalism major and listening to about half of my waking life of podcasts and hosting a podcast, that I think I can also do that part of it a little bit.
So we're gonna find out.
And then Andi will marry me, and we'll go into my past through now and kind of get to here. So, Andi, I guess like let's just go back. You're from like Philly area. Can you go back to like earliest childhood sort of memories? I mean, you don't need to go into everything, but just like the 1 through 5s.
I never liked school from a like social and anxiety standpoint. It wasn't until I was like 30 that I finally like got on medication for anxiety, but I've been anxious my whole life. So from like that standpoint, like I remember, I still don't like, I think this is pretty common, but I still don't like Sundays because I get like residual, like I have to go back to school and like some of that was from just like pressure to overachieve academically, but some of that was from like I'm gonna have to like go back to, I don't know, it felt like a Shark Tank, not like Shark Tank the TV show.
There's no Mark Cuban, but
I don't know. I just like I wouldn't say that I was like a loser or the direct target of bullying. I kind of like floated somewhere in the middle my whole life of like I had enough friends, but it was still a stressful environment. Very suburbs where I grew up. It's like a 25-minute drive into Philly.
What were your parents doing like when you were that age? Yeah,
my dad has worked in advertising for his whole career. So when I was really little, like I think up until I was like 4, he was the marketing director for the 76ers.
We've talked about this.
Yes, we have. And then after that, he was still focusing on marketing, but he had his own business, and he still runs his own business to this day. Awesome. He's not slowing down. My mom for many years worked in a real estate office. And then after I graduated high school, my mom actually became the makeup and costumes person for my old high school theater department.
And that's where this part of your life really starts to ramp up. Or what was it like before high school and like theater stuff?
My sister's 6 years older than me. And so I sort of, for a very long time, just kind of did whatever she did because my sister in my 6 years younger than her eyes was like, she's successful and she did everything right. My sister's incredibly smart.
Yeah.
For a really long time until she left the house for college, I was just like, we are doing things the way Maxine did them. Because when I got to certain grades, teachers were like, oh, you're Maxine's sister, because she was so smart and successful. Certain subjects in school I felt really comfortable with, like anything having to do with like humanities, languages, arts, what have you. I do remember from an early age, like we're a very like musical family. My dad always like sung and played harmonica in bands. My mom like got her master's in theater.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And my sister actually like very successfully competed in like high school choir competitions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't you say that she actually went to a college choir thing with Keith Raniere?
Oh, that's another story, but that was after she graduated college. Okay. My sister was a judge for, it was an organization that like held college a cappella competitions, because this is really like peak Pitch Perfect time and people were really getting into college a cappella. And she was invited to judge a competition
at the Vow Compound.
That was at the Vow Compound. At the time, though, people did not know that. And so she was there with other people from her company. And I've talked to her about this, and like looking back, she's like, it was definitely weird. And like, we definitely couldn't figure out, like put our finger on what was weird about it. And then like years later, obviously they figured it out. But
So you're in high school. What led you to doing performing? Like, were you doing performing in middle school?
Yeah, a little bit. So I was taking dance classes. I always liked singing. I always liked performing. I was like a little ham growing up because I'm the younger child. We have a lot of home movies of like my sister and I like quote unquote performing, you know, like singing whatever songs were popular at the time into like, you know, little toy tape recorders and whatnot. Yeah. And I think, again, because my sister was the first child. She was an only child for 6 years. And then I came along. People paid attention to me, but I think I learned at a young age, as all younger siblings do, that you get more attention if you just do a little gesture routine around the house.
Yeah, get all the aunts and uncles.
Yeah, so I was just like goofy. I was a little ham, and it was very much encouraged by my parents. They were like very entertained, and also like they love their daughters more than literally anything in the world. Yeah. My social life in middle school sort of like had a weird sort of tragic moment for me, in that my bat mitzvah was scheduled on the same day as someone else's bat mitzvah who I was friends with. So we'll call her Dana. And Dana and I had our bat mitzvah scheduled for the same day because we had originally gone to the same synagogue, but then Dana's family switched to a different synagogue. And bat mitzvah dates were like very, no pun intended, holy in the sense that you got them like 2 to 3 years before your bat mitzvah. Because it's a big event. You're becoming a man or woman in the Jewish faith, and
it's like season tickets for the Packers. Jesus.
Yeah, and it's like, well, and it's also like it's like a big party. It's like planning a life event, or at least it was in like the social and Jewish familial culture I grew up in, and so I got my bat mitzvah date. She had a different date than me, and then they switched synagogues. And Dana got the same date I did. And we were in the same group of friends. And it got ugly a little bit, in that we had already planned on mine being like an evening reception. And I want to say that like there was a conversation between my mom. And her mom was like, you guys do a luncheon in the afternoon and we'll do evening, and then all the kids can come to both. And my parents were like,
why do we get the one that's worse?
Yeah. Yes. To be honest with you, to this day, my mom could tell you probably every single specific of this event. I've forgotten a lot of it because my brain has been really nice to me. But the biggest offense of this time was around the time that I was already nervous, because Dana was arguably more popular than I was within the middle school community, and also like even my specific group of friends. I already sort of
in middle school still?
In middle school, yeah. I was like still, I always kind of felt on the outs with this group of people, because I just felt like they didn't get me. They thought I was a little weird and too much, and I don't know, like they were just cliquey. Yeah. And I had already kind of felt like I was not really a part of the core clique. And then I was in the car on the way to dance class with another friend, different friend, not Dana. This person we'll call Samantha. I was on the way to dance class with Samantha, and her mother was driving us because we would carpool and alternate because we went to the same dance class. And her mother, who was probably around the age that we are now.
Yeah.
Maybe a little younger, maybe a little older. I have no idea. She was like, I heard you and Dana have the same bat mitzvah date. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, without missing a beat and without considering the fact that this is like a 11 or 12-year-old child in the backseat of her car, she was like, aren't you afraid that everyone's going to go to her party and not yours?
Whoa, dude.
This is a grown woman.
I was just going to say, isn't this insane when you realize as an adult that a grown person told this to a 12-year-old?
Oh my God.
And you kind of just get really mad for your old self.
And this story has lived forever in my family. It will still get my parents heated.
I had my sports basketball parents falling out. That seems very similar to parents getting involved in school activities.
It was like an adult who at the time like you assume with all adults when you're a kid, is like the authority and knows more.
Yeah.
Confirming my worst fear.
Aren't you afraid? Yeah. It's like,
I was like, I don't think I said anything like that, but in my head I was like, fucking yeah, I'm afraid. And then that's kind of what happened in the sense that the way my mother tells it, that whole group of friends started sort of separating themselves from me. That was, I guess, the reason, like they chose a side. I kind of felt like it had probably been coming all along because I think I knew in my heart that these were not my people.
Yeah.
I had gone to day camp with these people. We ran in just a lot of the same circles. I had gone to day camp with them. I went to school with them. And like I even switched bunks in day camp because I was getting bullied by some of them.
Oh no.
They were just kind of mean, cliquey girls. I had like a real pivot where I made other close friends in middle school, thank God. I also had like my closest friend, Lauren, who I will not anonymize because I will only say good things about her. My closest friend, Lauren, she and I have been very close since we were like 2 years old. And so I always had her to hold on to. By the end of high school, it was kind of like the two of us against the world and then a couple other close friends. But like Lauren and I would literally be like, do you want to just get like takeout cheeseburgers from Ruby Tuesdays and then like watch our Flavor of Love DVDs? And that's what we did like every weekend. And we did not care that it was not like a cool thing to do. We would occasionally go to parties just to like show our faces and get in some like, flip phone pictures that we had like gone
to a party.
But the two of us, we were not drinking, we were not doing drugs, we weren't doing anything unsavory, we were just eating Ruby Tuesdays cheeseburgers and watching Flavor of Love.
And
like being weird. Like when we were 16, 17, 18, like final years of high school, because by that point I was like, I don't care. Because the other part of my social circle was from going to overnight camp, my overnight camp friends. Right around the time that this weird falling out about my bat mitzvah happened, I decided to go to overnight camp. And it was the first time I was really nervous about it. It's actually surprising looking back that I went because I was so nervous about it. And I ended up making friends with people based on like who I actually was. They just seemed to like me for me because you can't really hide yourself when you're living in a cabin with people and you don't have your parents around. You're being supervised by like at most a 19-year-old who like is there to hook up with other 19-year-old counselors, not like be a parent to you. So it was very just like freeing, and it gave me a lot of freedom to go back to the rest of middle school and pretty much all of high school and be like, I have my couple people that are really solid and I kind of don't give a shit what any of the rest of these people think. The vibes of the camp it was a Jewish overnight camp in the Pocono Mountains, and it was like the most fun I had ever had in my life. In my life. It was just fun. We did arts and crafts. We swam. We ran around. But like the most fun you would have was like at night when you were like in the cabin and they had people like with flashlights sort of like roaming around the grounds where the cabins were, but nobody was like in the cabin with you. So you and a bunch of other like girls your age, 12-year-olds, were just bonding. Like
that's crazy because most people at that age, like for instance me, like you don't really go to a thing like that and you're pretty much just in your little bubble. So it's cool like at that young of an age to like go completely out of a bubble and get like no parent zone. Like most people don't get that at like 12 or whatever if their parents are always around.
It was pretty transformative, I have to say, because like when you get a bunch of especially we're talking about the year 2001. Okay. It's 2001. These are a bunch of like 12, 13-year-old girls who are dealing with all of the things that 12 and 13-year-old girls deal with. And there was not really any media other than The Care and Keeping of You, the American Girl book about like puberty, which like I remember not wanting to read because I opened it. It had like illustrations of like different ways like your boobs might look. And I was like,
oh, not this. Yeah, when they try to give you a book about it at that age.
That was really, and like, I came from like a pretty like open communicative family culture. So it's not like I knew nothing, but like you're uncomfortable with your body during that time. You don't know certain things and they're questions that you want to ask, but you don't want to ask your parents. Is it a good idea to get information on like puberty and like sex from other 12 and 13-year-old girls? No, they don't know what they're talking about either. But just the act of being able to have that conversation and then, eventually...
You're not alone then.
Yeah, exactly. Eventually you turn off your flashlights and you go to bed and you wake up in the morning and you like continue to have these friends and like have fun. And it isn't weird that you like got into it and had like a deep conversation about like, I feel weird in my body right now. Anybody else? And everyone was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously. It was not a very religious experience. We did have Shabbat services and like the camp did try to really focus on like Judaism and Jewish values, but most of us, I felt like, at least my friend group, were there because we like loved each other and wanted to hang out and wanted to be away from our parents. And like, I think the part about it that felt like spiritual to me looking back was like, oh my God, for the first time in my life, I am able to have like actual close relationships with people. And they didn't already know where I stood before this.
Yes. Oh my God, it's a huge thing.
That was really what it was. Like looking back, I kind of cringe at this, but up until that point, the only people who called me Andi were my immediate family members. So like my mom, my dad, and my sister. Everybody else called me Andrea, even friends.
At school?
At school, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Even in high school?
Yeah. I was Andrea, yeah.
That's
crazy. I still am technically.
But like you don't go by that and never really thought about it that way.
It was literally, I got to camp. I don't know where this came from, but I got to camp and I decided I want these people to like actually know me. And so I just decided like someone asked me what my name was and I was like, it's Andi. I made a decision, which is like, I kind of can't believe it. And I probably wasn't thinking about it in this complex of a way, but looking back, I made a decision of like, I would like to try and be my actual self.
Wow, that's crazy for such a young age. Yeah,
I can. I'm sure I did not succeed. I had plenty of like, ways I still was like shy and embarrassed and awkward, and I still had horrible anxiety.
What about like choir in high school?
God. I hated choir so much because our choir director honestly should have been fired and forced to go to like intense therapy is really what. And I think this is a pretty common experience. We had a video of ours like go pretty viral about every high school theater kid has like heard like the kind of like painful like we don't have a show yet speech.
Yeah.
And the comments we got on that, I was like, high school
it got
theater and choir directors are emotionally and mentally not okay and need some extra mental health support.
Yes. Yeah.
And the kids that have had to study underneath them also do. My choir director would cry all the time in front of us.
Like weep openly?
Yeah. And it was like because she was disappointed.
Not on medication?
Well, yes, that's really why. But it was because she was like disappointed in us or frustrated with us. She was just not the kind of person that should have been standing in front of a room of like 100 kids who are teenagers who like don't want to really be there. I don't know. She would get very emotional and like start crying and like get very like blamey and like mean to us. Yeah. And she was very manipulative. Like this woman had already, by the time I got to high school, like my sister's generation of people who had come through with this woman already had a bunch of like battle scars from this. And like she had been There had been complaints about this woman for years. And eventually, after I left, they did move. They did not fire her. They moved her to the 4-5 school so that she would be working with younger kids, which I think is insane.
It's like how they moved the different priests in my hometown around whenever they committed some sort of sexual assault, and they'd move them across the state of Wisconsin, and then they'd come back.
And you'd be like,
didn't we all agree this guy was weird and he left our town? He may have been run out of it.
Yeah.
Now he's back.
Now he's back. We can't find anyone else?
Nope.
There's nobody else. Yeah. So she was like a bad, emotionally manipulative person.
High school, was there any other, like, so you did just generally high school stuff? Like you did shows, you were like the star in the musicals.
I was.
And how do you think that affected you kind of as you moved on? Because I know you've talked about like going to college after being like the star in high school.
It affected me both positively and negatively. It was good to feel like I was at like the top of my game at something, because even though I was very high achieving academically, I always felt like I was going to be exposed as a fraud of like, I may be at the top of my class, I may get good grades, but I am like barely keeping my head above water in order to do that. So it felt really good to have something that felt a little bit more effortless. I was still self-conscious about it, and there were still like really ugly social aspects of it. Like the biggest drama was when I was a sophomore, I was cast as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz.
Yes, I've seen these photos.
And and it was a big deal. You don't cast a freshman or a sophomore in the coveted lead role because
there's juniors and seniors who've been waiting or whatever.
Yeah, people who have paid their dues in the program, and you know, it upsets the parents. It's the same as your sports stories.
Yeah.
Very dramatic. It was between me and one other girl. But then I wasn't even expecting, when I did get it, all the upperclassmen got mad. Some upperclassmen, like, and other people in the show, like, during a break, like, went down the hall, and the girl who didn't get the part of Dorothy, like, sang for them. And then, like, they came back into the like auditorium area where we were singing, and one of them loudly was like, "You made the wrong choice. She should really be Dorothy."
Oh, that's so mean. I'm sorry.
In front of me. It was fine.
You just literally auditioned and got a part. What the fuck? I know.
And the thing is, I did really well.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, like, people still talk about it in my hometown, so it's like no big deal. And then I got to college, and Vassar's theater program is the experimental theater of Vassar College. So
that's the only one. There's no regular theater of Vassar College? Okay.
No, that's it. That is the drama department. It is the experimental theater of Vassar College. And I'm so grateful that I have the stories that I have. I would not change my theater education for anything, but I did not know what I was walking into. I did not know that I was going to be presented with like a weird Carol Churchill play that I did not understand at all, and be forced to like stage it using only whatever we could find around campus. And then we were all going to critique each other, and it was just it was a lot of really smart people who were like talking and thinking about theater in a way that I was not familiar with. Like as an academic subject and as like a liberal arts discipline, I was like more in the camp of like musicals.
We're going to perform it.
Yeah, I was like, musicals are fun, and I'm a funny comedic actress, and I know how to belt. And I was aware that I wasn't going to like a conservatory program that would have been more just like, here's musical theater. I was aware of that, and I didn't want to go to a conservatory program because I did want to have like a liberal arts college experience, but I was just not prepared. I was not prepared to like do the things that I did and be in the classes I was in. And I think I felt like stupid.
It's probably the point of it though.
Yeah.
You know, if you actually like look back and look at like the theory behind how they made the program.
And honestly, if I had just gone somewhere and I had like an extension of my high school career where they were just like, you're so talented, here's all the parts.
Go to a Big Ten school where they just have a conservatory and you just pretty much learn.
Right. And honestly, I might have still struggled there too, because it's a lot of
music
competition.
Theory.
A lot of people, music theory, but also like a lot of people want to be in the performing arts, and we don't live in a country where there are enough opportunities for everybody. So it would have been stressful anywhere, but looking back, I wouldn't trade my experience for the world, because I get to be like, so the drama department shows that I was in and the parts that I had were the most like normal one, for lack of a better word, was my freshman year. I was in Merrily We Roll Along. I was just in the ensemble. It was my first time dealing with Sondheim, so like that to me was like new. But that was, it was still a weird production, but like that. But then like the next things, Carol Churchill's The Skriker, where I played a dead girl. The other characters I played were Girl with Telescope. My only lines in that show were I had to just improvise, sing a melody of don't drink, there's blood in the water. Don't eat, like the food's rotten. I don't know. I was like...
Sounds like Dave Matthews.
I know.
There's blood in the water.
I might have been just now quoting Dave. It is possible that I was... Basically, I was like a demon from hell who like sang a little demon song and crawled out from under a bed.
Wait, what? Like in a horror movie?
Kind of, yeah. I mean... It was definitely a scary
like
show.
Hereditary
I don't
shit?
think it was a good show. Yeah, it was scary. I don't know if it was good. Like a lot of my friends who saw that show were like, I still remember it because we also like, we were wearing masks. We were trying to do like a commedia dell'arte thing, but I don't know if that really translated. So we had masks and we were also, there were points during the show where we wanted things to smell like sickly sweet. So we would like blast the audience.
Oh my God, you did 4D?
We would like blast the audience with like Glade air fresheners.
Nickelodeon 4D smell-o-vision?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Next thing I did was a show that was the fragmented poetry of Sappho performed in the style of Indian Sanskrit drama.
Oh
which,
my God.
Looking back was pretty appropriative and not okay. Yeah. Oh, and it was the poetry of Sappho performed in the style of Indian Sanskrit drama in order to somehow narrate the stories of women of Greek myth. None of this was successful.
God, this sounds like a Julie Taymor nightmare.
Yes, pretty much exactly. That's what I told, like when we did the Julie Taymor episode, I was like, this is what I have a Bachelor of Arts in. This. I don't know how to...
I don't know what it is,
define
but this woman.
Vassar did Rent my junior year. And up until that point, we're going back to high school theater. I had been paying my dues. I had been doing these smaller, more ensemble roles in shows that I wasn't even really excited about, but I went whole hog because as a drama major, you were required to do the department productions. They chose to do Rent, and I was like, this is it. I am going to be Maureen. I am perfect for this part. I'm going to do it. And I had a great audition. I spent the entire summer preparing for this audition. I had a great audition. I got a callback, and then I was put in the chorus of a different show.
Oh my God.
And I learned later it was because there had been some like bargaining happening where like the director of the show, who was the head of the department and turned out to be a horrible person,
yeah,
generally, who ended up dating a student. They're still together, but wasn't great.
Weird,
anyway,
yeah.
The head of the department was directing the show, and it was a big deal because this was like supposedly the first production of Rent post-Broadway. Like it had left Broadway, and like we got the rights first.
Oh my God.
Somehow.
You signed the lease.
Exactly. Jesus Christ, I just understood what you meant by that. Ew. Anyway, I was determined to get this part, and I thought that it was mine. I thought I had it in the bag because I remember at the callback being like, I did it. And I found out through the grapevine that I had basically been a bargaining chip a little bit of like, the director wanted someone else in a different role and basically bargained with one of the students of like, if I can put this person in this role, then you can put your friend in Maureen. And then it was like, oh, where do we put Andi? I guess we'll just throw her in the chorus of this other show.
Sucks.
And I was beside myself. I was so upset. That was like a pivotal moment in that I was like, you know what? The thing that I'm starting to feel like I'm really good at and am carving out like a niche for myself that feels comfortable is my sketch comedy group. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of when I made the decision of like, okay, I'm going to do this study abroad program at Second City. I'm going to like focus on my comedy group. And I am going to decide that like the approval of the theater department here is not really something that I care about.
And then post-graduation, now we're getting...
Yeah, post-graduation, I moved to Chicago almost immediately.
So you moved here because of comedy studies. This was like okay, I've already been there. I'm going to go like do Chicago for comedy.
Yeah.
I just thought of it, so I want you to tell the story. Can you do a really quick story of when you met Vince Vaughn at a water fountain at Second City?
It's like not related, but sure. So in my junior year of college, I decided to quote unquote study abroad, and I did the comedy studies program at Second City here in Chicago. And at that time, they were also preparing to shoot the movie. What movie was it? Was it The Internship?
The Internship?
No. It was, it was that one with Kevin James.
In Chicago, and
they're like car guys.
Okay, I don't know the movie, but I'm sure
we literally, it came on TV. I told you this because we were sitting, flipping through channels, and that was on, and sorry, everyone. We think Vince Vaughn is really funny.
So funny. That guy is funny in whatever he's in, and it could be the worst movie ever, and I'll still laugh.
Just doing the same thing.
Same thing.
Every time, but he's really good. Like, one of the jokes around our apartment is always like, you heard it here last. Vince Vaughn's a pretty funny guy.
Heard it here last. But anyway, this story.
But yeah, so this story was Second City offered Vince Vaughn and his fellow actors working on this movie rehearsal space because I guess they probably had like kind of an improvisational script. I have no idea. So they were rehearsing movie stuff in the same building that I was taking classes in. And there was one day that we were on lunch break from classes, and I went to the water fountain and I was carrying a bag of Subway because I had gotten Subway for lunch, and Vince Vaughn was drinking out of the water fountain. So I was like waiting for the water fountain behind Vince Vaughn.
Yep.
And I swear to God, I'm not making this up. It's going to sound like I am because it's just like so Vince Vaughn in a movie.
Yeah.
And he like finished drinking water, took one look at me, saw the Subway, and he was like, Subway, nice. Take care of your instrument.
Your instrument being
me,
you, because you're an actor.
And then he just walked away.
Like, that's Subway, nice. Take care of your instrument.
I was completely taken aback. And like, I only told you this story fairly recently. I was like, I can't believe I haven't told you this. I sometimes think that like maybe I made it up.
It's such a good line.
I knew of the Second City, but it wasn't until I went there and like was exposed to like going to see like main stage and whatever and realized, oh, this is the Tina Fey path. And like, I had also realized while I was there that there was like an actual sort of established path of like, you get on a cruise ship, then you do like maybe a Second City theatrical show in another city for a while. Galena, exactly. Then you like get on Torco, then you do the ETC stage, then you do main stage. And I was like, oh, there's like a structure and a path, and like I can just start on that path. I mean, once again, like everything else in my life, I realized farther along into it than I should have that I was like, I don't necessarily... I may not be one of the few people who benefit from this path. Yeah. Like, I may not get a chance. It was never like, maybe I don't want to do this. It was maybe there's some sort of failing in me. Like, I'm not brave enough. I'm not talented enough. I don't have enough nerve. And it wasn't until like, honestly, in the last couple years where I finally was just like, maybe I just don't want to. And like, I am punishing myself for not wanting to.
That's a big realization.
I don't know. And I still don't, to this day, I don't really know if it's true. It's just that I know that I'm like, the more I've sort of like pulled myself out of being in situations where other people control my artistic fate, the happier I am.
Yeah, you're speaking my language, because that's what I preach. Is trying to find the ways that you can just make your stuff without having to get permission to make it.
I tried a lot of different ways of doing that.
So what was your improv like in Chicago? Like, where did you find that you like liked it?
Musical improv. I hated doing regular improv. I felt like I felt a little bit duped, I remember, because when I did comedy studies,
just for people that don't know, like, can you just quick explain like the tenets of improv? I'm not, because
yes,
like I think people like what we're even talking about, because there may be people that like moved to Chicago to do improv. Like I did it too.
I mean, I feel like the simplest I can put it is like learning how to put yourself in a state where you're okay, like making up
stuff on the spot.
Stuff on the spot.
You learn all these different skills.
You learn ways of being open to like do a performance.
Doing scenes
nothing. And communicating from nothing. When I first got to Chicago to do comedy studies and also afterward, I came from an acting background and a writing background. I wanted to write and I wanted to act. I had no intention of doing improv. I did it because it was necessary when you move to Chicago. Like, improv is God here.
Yeah, so you have to get on a stage and do it. Like, otherwise, like, you're not going to really be a comedian.
And it was like, we're generating scenes from the improv, both in ideas and then also like, here's the idea for the scene. Here are the beats we want to hit. And that felt very cumbersome and difficult to me, I have to say. And it wasn't until I literally on a whim, feeling completely aimless, auditioned for the Second City Music Conservatory because I had dropped out of the regular conservatory. And I remember the audition was like, we're doing it. You're doing a scene, and then they would say, sing it, and stop the scene. And then the music director would start playing, and you would just like sing whatever came to mind.
Yeah, something in that scene. Or related to it, yeah.
It was the first, and it was weird. It felt like an aha moment or like a magical moment that people like describe, like a moment of like inspiration or whatever. Cause it was weird. As soon as I heard the music, I just kind of relaxed and I was like, I'm just like making up a little song.
Yeah.
I can do that.
For some reason, that's easier than making up a scene.
I do that all day long. I'm like, I'm going to make some coffee and then I'm going to drink it. This is terrible. This is really bad. This is a horrible example. I'm literally being like, I'm so talented.
You're really bad. You're actually really bad.
Anyway, I don't remember exactly what happened in the scene, but I remember leaving and being like, that was the only time I not only felt comfortable doing improv, I felt good.
Yeah.
When I wasn't doing improv, I was trying to have my plan B career.
Yeah.
Because at this point I was like, okay, acting might not work out. What's a career that I could have that if the actual creative side of things doesn't work out for me, I will still feel like it's fulfilling? And I decided that was going to be arts administration.
Which
working
is
at a theater. Yeah. I mean, arts administration is you work in the administrative office of an arts organization, either doing development, which is fundraising, or
customer service.
In my case, I was the audience services assistant, and then I was the audience services manager. It was my first like big girl job, the assistant job, and it was just a part-time assistant job. But I was like, okay, people who are in the performing arts often turn to customer service work because we are able to like fake being super personal. Like we literally,
you're literally like acting.
It's acting, but it also is. It's one of the only entry level. Exactly, it's one of the only entry level positions that's available to someone who just doesn't have a lot of other relevant work experience. And so a lot of the time, myself included, you end up falling into. I did the assistant job very capably. My boss left. I applied for the manager job because I was like, I mean, I've been working here for 2 years. There's a full-time job with benefits open. I don't know if I'm qualified for this, but I ended up getting it and I hated it.
Yeah.
I hated it so much.
I met you when in your career there? I don't know. I don't honestly like. I had already barely remember the year.
I think I had been in
officially.
The full-time position for like 2 years. I know, like people are like, "When's your anniversary?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know."
We've met so many times. Like we met, yeah.
It was a while ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
No. People get into arts administration for a variety of reasons, but the main one I think is that they want to be involved in the art. Really
want to act, they want to do it, they want to be on stage at some point.
Direct, be more closely involved with the actual art that's happening. Or in the case of like you're working for a museum or something, not necessarily that you want to be an artist, but maybe you want to be a curator. You want to be closer to the actual art because the art is the thing that excites you and it's the reason you did it in the first place.
Yeah.
If you loved administrative work or you loved customer service work or whatever, you could do that for any organization and make way more money than you could at an arts organization. But those are not the people who want to work in arts administration. The people who want to work in arts administration were like little old me, who was like, I want to be close to the art. If I have to do like regular office job stuff, I will be able to do it because I will feel motivated by the fact that what I'm doing is supporting the art.
Yep. But that only lasts.
It doesn't.
So long.
It wears off. It wears off, and also like you just learn whether or not you actually just like the actual work itself. Because even though I literally got to like have my office be right outside the theater, I got to like schmooze with the people who were doing the shows. I got to see rehearsals. I got to see performances for free. I was around it all the time, and I really did feel like I was a part of it. But I also felt very unfulfilled.
Yeah.
And I was not making any money. Was not able to save any money because it was a nonprofit arts organization.
Yeah, it was like a low salary.
It sucks. It just sucks. And a lot of it is...
God, yeah, I remember you...
I was really unhappy.
Very unhappy and stressed.
Well, and a lot of that had less to do necessarily with the fact that it was a nonprofit arts organization and more to do with the fact that like I had found myself in a position where I was managing an entire customer service team, and that is just not my calling in life.
Yeah. You're too anxious for that, probably.
I'm too anxious. I don't like managing people. I found that out pretty quickly. I thought that I did because I have always sort of felt like I am a good leader, but my leadership skills lean more toward like camp counselor. I have a lot of charisma. I can like be really positive and be really supportive, but at the end of the day, I want you to go home to your parents who are ultimately responsible for you.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to fire you. I don't want to have to reprimand you. I don't even really want to have to train you. Like
Yeah, you don't want to be a boss.
I don't want to be a boss. Not to quote 30 Rock, but there's a really amazing like Liz Lemon moment where like Jack Donaghy is like, do you want to go back to what you were doing before this? And she's like, I used to work for an all-female theater collective. Everyone was the vice president. And that's sort of what it felt like.
That's great. When you were working there and doing improv at the same time, like overlapping still, well, were there shows and things that you were like enjoying and proud of in the musical improv? Before it like got a little overwhelming or whatever?
There was the main thing that I got the most joy out of was a show at MCL Chicago.
That's where we met.
Music Comedy Live. It no longer exists. It became a yoga studio, and now it's probably an expensive condo building.
A condo or maybe
CrossFit
like,
box?
Probably a real estate office.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe some alderman is setting up a temporary campaign office there.
Yeah. That little theater only lasted for 4 years, but it was a theater specifically to support musical comedy.
Yep.
That is where you and I met. And it was where I performed in a show that was formerly called Vamp. Then it's currently called Riff. I still performed in it up until like several months ago. It's short form musical improv. It's basically like whose line is it anyway, but with even more singing.
And there's like a live band.
And there's a live band,
fun.
and it was super fun.
It was such a party.
It was
especially when like I was still drinking and stuff, and like going out to that at night. It started at 10:30.
We were drinking on stage as well.
So it was a drinking game show, and when I, as we'll get to in my story, was way too into drinking.
Yeah.
And so like it was very fun to like be meeting you and knowing the whole cast, and then just like drinking the whole show on the side and like laughing along with my friends, and then afterward we'd all go party all night.
It was one of those rare times that like I knew I was in the glory days while I was in them. Like everything sort of
like a Wednesday night. We all just were doing improv, bumming around the city, jobs, whatever. But
everything just felt like it was in sepia. You know what I mean? I would like look around and I'd be like, I get to perform in front. Like the houses were always packed because it was a really fun show and it was a BYOB theater. So everybody was drunk, including the people on stage. So like looking back, like, can I qualify it as exclusively a positive experience? No. But, and I am not at all promoting like getting drunk before you do improv, but everything I just said, I was super anxious.
Yeah.
Anytime I had to do improv, and I wasn't on SSRIs then, and I wasn't seeing a therapist then. So alcohol did a really nice job of just loosening me up a little bit.
Do you want to talk a little bit about like the SSRI mental health?
I had been seeing a therapist since I think 2018, and I was starting to really parse out the fact that I was dealing with just like crippling anxiety all the time. I was high functioning, and so I think a lot of people didn't know that. You knew it because you and I were living together and were dating, and I couldn't.
The OCD levels were.
Yes, the OCD levels were really bad. It had always been anxiety. It transformed into anxiety and OCD at some point. Maybe it always was. I really don't know.
Pandemic definitely.
Made it so much worse. But I remember like I went to my first therapy appointment and I immediately just started crying. because I was just I had been feeling like I was on the verge of tears at all times because I really didn't like my job, and I was really stressed out about like my performing life and what that was going to look like. And I was just having a hard time just like getting through a day emotionally. And I love my therapist. I've been with her ever since, but I did reach a point during the pandemic where I was having incredibly strong, just compulsive behaviors around anything having to do with germs. And it had been starting up before the pandemic, and then the pandemic happened, and it was sort of like my worst, most irrational fear that like the only solace I took was that I knew it was irrational.
Yeah.
I still couldn't avoid it. Now it was like actually happening. And like, I felt paralyzed because I would be like, if we're going to go outside, then when we come back in, I need to like wash my hands, and then I need to clean the faucet that I touched with my potentially contaminated hands. Now I have Clorox all over my hands, so I have to wash my hands again. I was I was afraid of germs, and I was also afraid
cleaning materials
of cleaning solutions because I was afraid that I was going to accidentally poison myself. You were very supportive, and I know it was also very hard for you because I was just in a constant state of like fear, and I was just all these compulsions. I was just like, there's a certain way that things have to be. I was afraid of like accidentally creating chlorine gas in the toilet by cleaning it.
Yeah, no wonder I always have to clean the toilet.
I was afraid of accidentally mixing chlorine gas in the toilet by using one
Here's
sort of...
my logic on that. When those types of thinking, it's like, it's what my brother always says about the economy. It's like, if the stock market's going to go to zero, like we have bigger problems.
Yeah.
If it was so easy to make chlorine gas in a toilet bowl, everyone be doing it. You know?
You're not wrong.
Having 9 people every day dying of huffing their toilets.
I can trace my OCD actually back pretty directly to a bed bug scare that happened when I was dating someone who I dated before you very briefly. After a couple times of staying over there, I was like, why do you have these big, like, bites or pimples or whatever they are? Like, is that a mosquito bite? What is it? And he was like, there must just be some like spider in this bedroom that just like keeps biting me. He was not convinced at first that it was bed bugs. And then he had people come out. It was definitely bed bugs. And it wasn't even like a like low problem. It was like a medium to big size problem. God. And I immediately freaked out because, you know, I had this person like sleep over my apartment once or twice. And so I called a pest control company. They came out, they checked, they treated. They said they found like minor possible evidence, but to this day, I'm like, I think they just wanted me to not be like, why did you charge me if you didn't find anything? But I began to experience a level of paranoia that I had never experienced in my life. I was like staying up all night looking at like weird internet message boards about, I was checking my mattress every single day. I was keeping laundry that I had washed in searing hot water and then dried, ruining all my clothes. I ruined all my clothes, and then I wouldn't even put them back in drawers. I would keep them in sealed trash bags.
You had trash bags that I had to open, and I was just cutting them open and like dealing with them one day, and you were like, "Don't, what are you doing?"
Those are my bed bug
you still
trash
had
bags.
that, and I was like, "There's nothing in here."
They were trash. Those trash bags in particular were trash bags of, so like they give you instructions on like what to do before people come over to treat your house, but you don't realize just how much shit you have until you like have to deal with something like bed bugs, where you're like, what am I supposed to do? Everything's made out of fabric. Am I supposed to just get rid of or burn or like, what do I do? And so I was like asking the woman on the phone so many questions. I was like, what do I do with my shoes? What do I do with like backpacks? What do I do with purses? And she was like, you can put that stuff in like an airtight trash bag and just like leave it, not touch it for, I forget what the amount of time was. I decided the amount of time was 5 years.
Forever. Yeah.
The rest of my life, I will not open. By the time you open those trash bags, I was like, oh, I didn't even know what was in there. Like, but I was like, these are my belongings, but I don't want to ever open this because there may have been one bed bugs. Like, I know everything there is to know about bed bugs. I could tell you endless facts.
So you had the bed bug scare, and then like that carried over and was one of the things that made you realize you needed meds.
You remember like a visual in like a science textbook growing up about evolution would be like that it goes like in like big leaps, but like is mostly slow. That was like, I literally, if you were charting my like mental health problems, it was like, not going great. And then it was like big spike.
Yeah.
Like that ruined my brain because all of a sudden we had entered a new reality where like I was not certain if I could be trusted, if my opinion of things could be trusted. And that was when I relied a lot on like family and friends and also you at certain points. I started needing like rationality touchstones.
Yeah, you would just like come in and be like, is this insane? And I'd usually be like, yes.
I would come in and I would be like, I am having this thought and I cannot shake it. And I need to know if this is like a thought other people would have or if it's just me. And it would usually be something super convoluted. Like, I clean the toilet with this type of cleaner, which is not a bleach-based cleaner. It's a different type of cleaner.
Like, stop. No.
But I also used a bleach-based toilet cleaner afterward inside the toilet.
And then I licked it. Will I die?
I never got that far, but like I would just spiral and I would either have to like call my parents or text my sister or like there were a lot of close friends that I relied on where I was just like, I can't tell. I was having trouble telling like what is a real thing that someone needs to be worried about and what is not.
Oh, I can relate to that.
And worrying felt very productive. It felt like if I had available time and I wasn't spending it trying to like tackle or figure out whatever the like premier worry in my brain was, that I was like wasting time.
Yeah.
And then eventually, after several years of therapy, which did help quite a bit, it didn't transform my life in the way that I thought it was going to. I still felt like it had a lot of benefits and I was getting a lot out of it. But at the height of the pandemic, when things got really, really, really bad for me and I was really struggling, I said to my therapist, like, I might be ready to consider talking to a psychiatrist because she's a therapist. She couldn't prescribe. She knew a great psychiatrist that she like was a good colleague with. She recommended her. Within 20 minutes of talking to this woman on like a telehealth visit, she was like, yeah, you have anxiety and OCD and I think you could really benefit from something like Zoloft. And I was like, you don't want to hear
so
more?
Quick. And I remember you got that phone, you're like, I got more. She was like, nope, right away.
I was like, I literally said to her, I was like, okay, do you feel like it is worth continuing to explore whether or not this is true? And she was like, it's true. And then what I've always said to you about my experience with SSRIs, particularly Zoloft, Queen Sertraline, I didn't really notice it happening. It's like I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I was like, something will trigger me now. And I kind of thought like when I healed or got better or whatever, that like things wouldn't even trigger me anymore. I would just be moving through the world like happy as a clam. I still get triggered, but literally what happens is I'll be like, I really just don't feel like I don't feel like it. I could
go, but I don't want to today.
I just don't feel like it. I'll literally be like, I don't have the interest or the energy in getting all worked up about this, so maybe I'll just ignore it. That option was never available to me before.
Oh, yeah. I know.
Not even remotely available to me
before. You have
to
go into it and dig into it. Your brain is like going to have to like analyze why you're bad.
So like, we'll talk about this when we flip to you in a sec, but like when you started at SSRIs, I remember telling you like, I'm not a clinician, so like take this with a grain of salt, but like I don't think you're going to feel immediate effects. Obviously it takes like a few months, but also I was like, it was not like for me at least, it was not like today I'm all better moment. I know you've had like a different experience slightly, but like for me, I was like, it was only in looking back like over a year into it that I was like, I guess it worked.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
It was very slow and it was very gradual. And it's still, I still struggle, but like now I really just thought it was going to be like, that thing I want to worry about, I don't need to because I'm happy and I'm pleasant. Instead, it's just me being like, I really don't feel like it. Like, it's not it's not like cool and serene. It's just me being like, that version of myself sucks.
Yeah. So since you've been on the SSRI, like just very more recently, I mean, we can talk about this in mine too, but might as well just get everyone all the way up. Like you are doing court reporting training. That was your big pandemic project.
It was. I went back to
gain
school.
A skill that you could do.
Yeah.
That.
There's always going to be court.
Yeah. And then we obviously started the podcast.
Yeah.
And haven't looked back on that.
No, we haven't. So much so that we're doing this so that we can put out an episode.
An episode of that podcast. And then now you're working at a store in the neighborhood, which is badass because it's like a walk away. And
I love it. I always say I'm in my Kathleen Kelly moment. Kathleen Kelly is the main character in You've Got Mail, played by Meg Ryan, and she works in the shop around the corner. I love the lifestyle of like, I need to be at work in 10 minutes. Cool. I'm going to leave my house, walk over there. I will be there. Like, yeah. And I'm having a really nice time. I've decided to keep my life more simple in this way. And like, I don't know. I've gotten over the like, oh, I'm just like a part-time retail employee. I'm like, I like my job. How many people can say that they like their job? And it gives me the flexibility to like still be pursuing court reporting, which is taking a lot longer than I thought it was going to take. I think I was very naive to think that I was going to just be working in 2 years of school. It's still taking me time to like build my speed and accuracy. The thing I always say to people is like, imagine you've never played piano before or read music. And then in 2 years, you think you're going to be able to like play at the Met.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because like learning stenography, you are literally learning a new piece of equipment, a new way of typing, a new way of like approaching language and like reading words, and then like executing that at 225 plus words per minute. So I was naive. I thought like, oh yeah, I'll learn it and I'll be able to do it like really quickly. It takes a long time. But yeah, I probably am like right now the happiest and most content and calmest I think I could have been in recent memory.
That's so good. Well, you've been through a lot. I really love you very much. And thanks
Sorry, I was in the middle of sipping water.
Thanks for letting me Maron you.
Yeah, now I get to Maron you. Oh, we're holding hands.
Yeah, so we'll take a little break and I'll come back in here and you can Maron me.
Okay. How long did that go? That felt long.
2 hours and 11 minutes.
Oh my God.
2 hours and 40 minutes.
Oh my God. That's not good.
Yeah, well,
that's too long.
Cut it.
So I guess let's start the same way you started with me. Like take me back to your childhood in Wisconsin.
Okay. So grew up in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. So Beaver Dam was like less than like 20,000 people or something like that, or like around, I don't know. And like just like small town sprawl is kind of how it like kind of not like nice parts and stuff, but very like spread out small town. Where I lived was out in the country on like a dead end cul-de-sac that butted up against Beaver Dam Country Club, or butts up against currently a sort of local public golf course that was like not the good one in town, but like the more like one that you would take your uncle on 4th of July.
I remember when I went out there with you, you were like, yeah, we live in the suburbs. And then I went out there. I was like, this feels like...
It's not the suburbs. I don't know. It's rural.
But
it's a rural subdivision. That's how it is.
There's like a collection of houses that looks like a suburb, but once you get a little bit outside that, is corn.
It's corn. It's corn and soybeans. That's where I'm from, corn and soybean country. Basically, everything you drive by is corn and soybeans. No, it's beautiful, especially now with all the trees got older. When I go back, like in the middle of summer, like it looks like you're in a forest.
It is pretty there.
Because you have like all the trees and then right down into the golf course. And like, we golfed on that course a lot, which we'll get to. But yeah, like I said, it's weird to describe because it's not like we lived in like some mansion on the golf course. It's just like this public course happened to be by our house.
Yeah.
That was like where we lived as a kid. I feel like the stuff I remember a lot is like my mom being really into like holidays and Christmas and like going all out for us as kids, which was really fun.
Yeah.
Like candy bowls everywhere. Like I'm just like trying to remember things from like very young because like I don't have a ton of those memories either.
To have that validated because I don't have those, or
like
I don't
remember,
think I have them.
You know, running under the swings on the playground in elementary school and getting kicked into the pool and having a concussion, and then them not calling my parents for like a long time.
Yeah.
And my mom getting real. Like, I remember the stories, but that's because like lore has been told to me.
Yeah.
Elementary school, went to Trenton School, which was the rural elementary school out for the closest to my place. So, when you come out, you turn left out of our subdivision toward Fox, like towards way out of town, even further.
We don't
more
turn
rural.
left out of your subdivision very often, now that I'm thinking about it.
It goes way into farmlands. We were literally in the middle of a farm field, the small school that had 1st through 5th grade.
How big was your class?
Like 30.
Okay.
Something like that.
Still
all the way through.
Small though, yeah.
All the way through. Same kids from pretty much kindergarten, like small knit group. Like those 30 kids, like pretty much became like my friends and stuff.
Yeah. Did you continue being friends with them as you moved to like middle and high school, or no?
A little bit. Middle school, yes. Some of them carried over.
Because I'm assuming
for
other
sure.
elementary schools also filtered into
there were like
middle
6.
school. Okay.
There's a weird amount of elementary schools. Now there's not that many. There, at the time, they popped up little schools everywhere to be like close to every area. Like probably pretty nice for a small town to have that many elementary schools.
Yeah.
I feel like middle school is kind of hell for everybody.
It is.
I remember like having friends that also bullied me in middle school a lot.
That's a hallmark of middle school. Like friends who also hate your guts and want to ruin your life, and you still want to hang out with them.
Yeah, and I liked band and stuff in middle school. That's when I got into that, and like the band kids.
So you played trumpet.
I played trumpet.
How did that come to be?
We all got brought into the auditorium one day when you're entering, I think it was in 5th grade, because you had to get your instrument, and then you're going to go to middle school where you're going to play in a band for the first time.
Yeah.
So you pick it up like the very basics in 5th grade, and I had to go to the middle school during the summer to pick instruments, and they had like a day where they had all of them, and you got to like blow on a tuba, hit a drum. And I blew on a trumpet and could make a noise, and they were like, "You should do that." So I did.
You had the natural embouchure.
Yeah, I had the embouchure enough to like do that, and so I did it. And I went with it all the way through high school, because once you start something, you just have to do it, I guess. Yeah, I played trumpet. I had friends, a few friends that I was like really close to, that we just like really got into video games and basketball cards, nerdy things. Like that was when I was like afraid and nerdy and anxious, and I had a couple other afraid, anxious friends, and we would hang out on the weekends, and like our parents knew each other, and I would go for sleepovers. But I kind of thinking back, like I was always on like the outs of the big groups of friends, or like I knew them, but like never felt that included. And then I would have a couple friends that I would actually hang out with and seem to know.
It's very similar to what I described as well. So you also played sports.
Yes,
growing up.
As we talk about on the pod a lot.
We do. When did you start playing any sports? Like,
Probably
what was your earliest?
T-ball. And then like
okay.
off to the races. Like, okay, if I'm going to be a sports guy, I got to play one in every season.
Do you think that you enjoyed it and therefore wanted to do more of it? Or was it just like that is what the boys...
Both.
Okay.
I liked it. Wanted to get good at it. That was probably the driving force. I wanted to show that I was like as good or better than the athletic boys or whatever, and was on that par. I don't know that I actually like loved all the games so much that I needed to play them. I love basketball and worked super hard at that. Football, I played in middle school. I played when I was like a big kid, so it was pretty easy for me to be a lineman. But then I got to middle school and they wanted me to play line, and so I played like center and offensive line mostly, and was really good. But then they obviously wanted me to keep doing it and bulking up and being like a big high school O-line player. So I played freshman year, and like I gotta admit that I did like doing like a pull block around the right.
I don't know what that is.
So I played left tackle, and so I would be on the left side of the line, and there'd be a sweep right counter or whatever, which meant that I actually like faked like I was gonna block and then ran right and led out in front of the running back and just like level like 3 guys. That was fun.
Did it feel weird to like aggressively have to like
always
hit your peers?
It kind of did. And then so what broke for me was I was on a kickoff once and I just got blindsided by a kid.
Oh no.
Never after that did I have the like assurance that I wasn't going to get blindsided on the field, and it really fucked with me.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because he just came out of nowhere and I was on the ground.
And it feels personal even though it's
not. It's part of the game, but I was like, well, first of all, I was like, I want to fucking kill that kid. But then I was like, what am I doing? Especially on kick returns. Like, what am I blocking for kick returns for? I'm just going to get killed. And then I was just kind of like, okay, football, I I don't want to do it because they want to push me to like bulk.
Yeah, you said that.
And I was had a lot of food stuff.
Same.
And so the idea of bulking felt like, you want me to be a fat kid? I already hate the idea so much of being a fat kid. I was made fun of my whole life. That's one of the reasons why I was like made fun of and never really felt like I fit in, because I was always like chunky and made fun of for that.
Yeah. I got that as well, but
we didn't get into it with
nobody was trying to make me a linebacker.
That was my like early sports, and then I stuck with basketball all the way through mostly high school.
But you had some disappointments with basketball. We've talked about that.
My dad was an accountant throughout this whole time at Parent Dot, which is this accounting firm that he like was at his whole life in my hometown. It moved like once, I think, to a new office, and then he owned it for like the second later chunk of his career, because that's like how it just gets passed down. And my mom worked at the dental hygienist, Dr. Robert Oines, where we got our free teeth cleanings. I always remember that. I hated going, but it was always free. And Jan, our hygienist, was like my mom's friend who would not stop talking while we were trying to get our teeth cleaned. So it would be like this. So how was school, Jim? I couldn't say anything. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, so we would go over to our friends who had a pool in the summer and had two kids of one of my age, one of Dave's age. And so we would just go over there and hang out. We had like some of our best friends, and that was always kind of fun on Tuesday, Thursday.
People who had pools growing up, that was luxury.
And there were tons of kids in our neighborhood growing up. Like, living in Chicago now, I don't know what it's like really in the suburbs or even back home in my area if there's like young families with kids playing. But there were tons of kids playing. Like the Larsons were a walk away. So like they were there. Then like they had a whole cul-de-sac of people. We had a whole cul-de-sac. And sometimes we would all get together for like bike races, football games. Like the kids were like a little bit organizing themselves.
But you also were a boy, and we've had these conversations where like the shit that you would get into when you were young with like other boys in the neighborhood, I always say like, I'm shocked that you have all of your limbs.
Yeah, let me go through a list
and
really
that you're
quick
alive.
Of just things I remember.
Still.
A lot of fireworks, ones that we shouldn't have had. A lot of jumping bikes on wood ramps, taking ATVs and pulling things like sleds in the winter. And like down the road, well, everyone was at work. All the parents were at work. Going on the golf course and looking for golf balls was one of our favorite things. We would go like bundle up and go in. One of our friends got stung by an entire nest of hornets once.
Oh my God.
Because you're going in like marshes looking for golf balls.
Jesus.
I mean, we just did.
What is the point of looking for golf balls?
We would collect like hundreds
something?
of free golf balls, like people hit into there from the golf course.
And then do what with them? Golf with them?
Yeah,
okay.
or use them or whatever. Okay. Have them, because it was cool to like find brand new golf balls that some asshole hit off the first tee into the woods, and we would go into that woods at like twilight after everyone stopped golfing.
That's really funny.
With the buckets and just look.
Wow.
And sometimes you'd run into bees and things.
Meanwhile, bees and things. Meanwhile, my best friend and I were like standing on my bed in my old dance recital costumes, pretending to be the Spice Girl, two of the Spice Girls accepting a Grammy Award.
Yeah, and then there was, like I said, like a lot of video games. Like I just remember loving going to my grandma's with my cousin and stuff.
Oh, because she had cable.
Yeah, watching cable, We didn't have cable at home until I was like in middle school, maybe late middle school, high school, because we like got an addition. Maybe it was earlier than that, but we got an addition onto our house that was like the big thing where we like doubled our house size, and we finally had like a nice TV. Like our house went from really small to like we have a TV room and big screen TV my dad got, and like I just remember that being like a crazy weird moment.
Was it sports that was mainly on the TV?
Yeah, lots of sports, lots of ESPN now that we had it. That's where I got like every morning before school, I'd watch SportsCenter with Dave, really tired, pissed that we had to go to school, watching SportsCenter. Before that was, we would sneak up, and we weren't allowed to play video games as much, so we would sneak downstairs when my parents were gone on those Tuesday and Thursday mornings, and we knew where my mom hid the video games. So
she hid them from you so that you couldn't play them, but you knew where they were.
Yeah, and we'd find NBA Shootout 98. We'd play an all-star game, East versus West, before school, and I think I would always be East and he'd be West or something. We always had one of our teams because they were evenly matched, and we'd play.
Did that make you feel sort of like less terrible about having to go to school, maybe?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
We had that little moment of like a half hour where like we had before the bus.
So you and your brother are still very close.
Yes. I think we like bonded, like we had like the little bit of brother infighting early, but I don't remember much of it. Like we punched the shit out of each other with boxing gloves, and I was bigger, so I would like.
But that was like for fun.
Yeah, and then it like we would kind of fight when we were really young. Like he was just always on my cousin and I's nerves. But he was very
younger
and
sibling.
so it's like there were never like teen through adult issues. Like my brother and I was always close because we kind of like bonded over spending so much time together, like pretty much alone a lot of like afternoons. Like just our childhood was a lot of like keeping ourselves company.
Yeah,
we were together.
Based on conversations we've had, you were kind of a different person like before you went to college and then after you went to college, just because.
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean, it was the same for me. Like your world is very small when you're younger.
Yeah.
So like
senior year of high school.
Yeah.
I finally came out of my shell a little bit, but I was like trying so hard to be like part of the popular crowd. I realized, and now I was incredibly anxious and had no real way to like connect. So like I wanted to like meet all these people and know the popular kids and stuff. And like I finally kind of did senior year by just like forcing myself into there and like losing weight and getting like what I thought was like hot or confident. So it was very attached to like, I definitely lost some weight, got some new clothes, felt like finally the popular kid, because like, you know, you want to be that your whole life when you're not.
Yeah.
And my senior year, I kind of like felt like that, and I like, you know, went to parties and drank for the first time. And like I still remember like drinking with my friends in Madison at a high school wrestling tournament we went to watch one of our friends. That was senior year, and they were like, you know, we're gonna be drinking, and I was like, sure. And so I did it, and like it was the best thing ever. Like I was like so
you were like, oh, I
relieved,
feel great.
and like that was so fun. And then it like, I mean, we'll get into this, but like,
did you have
sort of became part of the crowd that like went to parties and stuff. Had hosted stupid parties with friends where we just like played World of Warcraft and got too drunk.
Did you have any like feeling of like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this because it's underage drinking? Because a lot of what kept me from doing stuff was I was afraid of getting in trouble.
Until senior year I did, but I think, so then it was my after my confirmation in Catholicism, like I was basically like, okay, I did it. That was the assignment. I never believed any of it, so I'm done. I think that was a big part of it, was like, okay, at least like I don't need to go to church anymore because I like did the requirement.
So even you were allowed to stop after you were confirmed?
No, I was like expected to still go, but
okay.
I in my mind was like, oh God, at least that's over, so I can just like be a senior now. The other big thing was I quit basketball my senior year. I told this story on our LeBron episode, but our coach like said I wouldn't basically play. I could be on the team, but I wouldn't play all year. So I quit and I joined the golf team, which was the chillest team ever. We just played golf. I made the varsity team because I shot low enough. Because
you had grown up like just wandering over to the golf course next door to play.
So I played like, you know, 4th, 5th, like not high on the team, but I got to play on that and just like straight up just played rounds of golf for free, or $25 or whatever it cost to join the golf team. Very into video games, man. I just really was. Computers, I wanted to figure out everything about how to, we didn't really have computers too. We just have extra ones from my dad's office because they were really expensive back then. And so I would play at like my friend's house who did have things, or like use one of my dad's office PCs to go to a LAN with friends and barely be able to run Counter-Strike.
Do you want to talk about LAN culture while we're here?
I mean, we would do LANs, which was like, that was like, instead of, before we started drinking, and then sometimes when we did start drinking in high school, we would do a drunk LAN.
Can you explain what a LAN is?
It's just in the era before everyone would play video games online a lot, we would get together and play all in the same room on our same computer. So
on a local
someone would have like
network.
A box. It was very crude early networking. Someone would have a box that you plug LAN cables into, and then it would go to all the computers, and then you try to get it to work.
And you'd have to physically bring your computer
the whole box. So a big thing was people helping each other carry boxy monitors and the whole box down into basements. Moms going like, you guys in those computers. Like, you know. And so we did that a lot.
Oh my God.
So that's what we nerded out about. Like, I remember my brother and I always wanting to learn more, like have a better computer, but we didn't.
Was there any like distinction when you were younger between like, did you feel like you were part of two worlds of like, I'm part of like the like LAN nerdy world and also like the popular drinking
this is where that sort of
or?
started for me in general. I would never really knew where I fit, or I had friends in multiple places, or like one good friend that happened to be in, so I also didn't feel super included in one ever. And that's, my dad's described that too, because he moved around schools as a kid. Like, but I think I've sort of had a similar experience where it's like, I didn't feel like I had any one firm group, but could dabble.
That's how I felt in high school too. So like transitioning over to college, which was kind of feels like a pivotal moment for you in both positive and negative ways.
Initially really positive. So I applied and got into 3 schools.
Great. That's awesome.
Marquette University, University of Minnesota, and University of Wisconsin. And Wisconsin was last.
And I remember you telling me that you felt like Wisconsin was kind of a long shot because you didn't think
really
that
tough.
you were...
I got it.
Your grades were good enough or whatever.
Extracurriculars.
Which is crazy to me because like you're one of the smartest people I know. But
I don't know. I
get it.
Yeah, it got in there, and I went there with a handful of other people from my school, including some good friends at that point, like senior year friends. So that was cool that I had to transition, but I didn't live like in the dorm with any of them, so it was all new people. And I just remember when I showed up there, I was like, I'm gonna be an outgoing person now. I just forced it, and it benefited me a lot. Like my freshman year at Madison, I just knew everybody. I made an effort. It was weird.
You were really social.
It was really weird. Like I would go down to the girls' hall. I would go down to just to knock on doors because nobody knew anyone. I think I realized no one knew anyone and no one was talking. And that's for some reason my brain was don't allow yourself to be in high school again where you don't do anything. Talk to everyone possible. So that's kind of how I attacked college. So I met everybody. I met friends from the 6th floor in Whitty Hall, friends from all over the building, and the other buildings. And then you go to parties and you meet people, and it was just wild, dude.
And you were having
meeting
fun.
of people. Oh my God. And drinking so much.
Immediately?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Blacking out with everybody. That's how we all got to be friends, is we had these crazy drinking stories. I always remember freshman year of college living with my roommate, and we would provide the beer for the floor because he had a fake. And so we would take giant duffel bags and go get 5 cases of beer 30.
And then just be carrying heavy
it up.
duffel
And then
bags.
there would be RAs in the elevator, and we have a thing that a body could be in full of beer 30.
And you're like, it's a body.
It's a body.
Don't worry, it's
Don't
a body.
worry.
It's not beer.
It's not beer. So then we would
It's a
bring
dead
it back
body.
and people would pay us, we'd just hand it all out.
Wow.
Stuff like that was just so fun. And Ian's Pizza
That
was right
earns you a
across the
lot of
street.
points, though.
It really did. I would do
Yeah.
stuff like that for that reason. Oh, we're going to be the cool kids that
That's
have the beer.
very super bad, shitload of different shit.
Shitload of different shit. Or watching that movie right around that time too with all the
Yeah.
people in the dorm. We would just be in the dorms off hours, just wander down the hall and watch Superbad or Entourage, or I don't know, it was crazy. And then sophomore year, we didn't live in dorms because at UW you jump to whatever.
Off-campus housing.
And actually a big moment happened when I went back after freshman year. I had to get a job, and this was the first sort of okay, I'm in the real world
because your parents told you had to get a job, or it was part of your...
I'm not going to be able to have any spending money really. I was getting help for college, but spending money, I needed to
everybody's different,
subsidize. So
yeah.
I worked at a place called Richelieu Foods,
Oh,
which was a
yeah.
frozen pizza and frozen foods plant in
You hated it.
Well, looking back, it was kind of transformative because here I am going to this privileged university, and I come back and I work after freshman year with factory line workers. One of my jobs was rubbing oil on pizza crusts for an hour and a half at a time.
With fully grown adults
Yes.
who this is their
Their
life.
jobs were tasks. Their jobs were I had to shovel potato salad from one thing into a thing that filled it with a plastic shovel. I had a horror story. It was very funny where I had to run a crane that lifted giant things of peas and chopped carrots, and I dumped carrots a ton of carrot, an amount that freaked out the whole factory.
All over the floor.
Because they just trusted me with the machine. This pneumatic lift, because they were you're a college kid. You can probably figure this out.
They put you on the crane?
They put me on the lift. And I tipped the thing weirdly, and I jostled it and dumped, and we were freaking out. But
you're I have done a crane machine for a stuffed toy, that is it.
I've gotten a Pokemon out of a machine.
Stuffed Pikachu.
So I just remember, and then talking to people about how their lives sucked and how they wish they didn't work there. Adults, 40-year-olds who I became friends with essentially because I'm just talking to people. And I just remember after those two, I also had major eating stuff coming out of freshman year because I was I'm going to go back hot to sophomore year because I saw what college was, and it was okay, now the next thing is I'm going to be ripped and stuff, and I'm going to come back as a new person.
So how did you accomplish that?
I would go to the YMCA after working I worked at 6 a.m. Then I would go to the YMCA and swim.
Oh,
and I was just
my
killing myself.
God.
I think like I probably returned to college and people were probably like, what, are you okay?
Yeah.
Because I was like so messed up with that, with like body stuff.
Oh, I mean, we actually, oddly, because even though it's one of my like main passionate topics I love to talk about, I like, I had a similar thing throughout high school and college.
Sophomore year, come back, live in an apartment. It was fine, live with some of my roommates. And that's when I started to have to like apply for the journalism program because I said I was a journalism major, but you're not just in. You had to like do this rigorous application.
I never understand
to
that
get
at colleges
into the school.
Because like if you're already going to the school and they don't let you into the program you intended to go to, you're just supposed to change schools or change interests?
It's weird. So I liked writing and, trying to figure out my interests, like, coming out of high school, and I was like, what if I do journalism? And I really like politics and that kind of stuff. I like those types of movies. Like, what if I do a double major in journalism and poli-sci? So I was like committing to 2 majors, and I did that. So I had the poli-sci major going, and in the J school major, I was mostly fulfilling all my prereqs before I could get into it and then do the actual. By that end of that year, I got into it for my junior year and senior year.
Was it like rolling admission?
Yeah,
oh, okay.
Rolling admission every semester, and it would let a certain other class in. I got in, and that became like this really intense program, and that taught me a ton of stuff. There was like the first class you had to take was like a 6-credit monster, where you would do basically crash course in everything about headline writing, log lines, right? Like editing,
like newspaper
journalism, formatting, all that type of shit. Crude web design, early like Dreamweaver stuff, like anything you could think of. It was really, really comprehensive, like crash course. And I remember like being so afraid. I wanted to do the journalism side. You could pick your path between mass comm, like advertising, and journalism. I really wanted to do journalism. I was writing for the paper, Badger Herald, but just sort of like puff stories here and there. I was doing all that type of shit, and I was too afraid really to interview people. So I ended up just picking the advertising side, even though I really wanted to like be a journalist.
Like the act of like calling someone and asking them questions.
Yeah, after being that guy.
Yeah.
I was too anxious at the time to ever allow myself to fully do it, even though I admired those people so much that were willing to like call a senator and be like, fuck you, essentially. Or like
ask them
questions like about hard things, like stuff I didn't have the balls to do.
I talked about this when you were interviewing me, but like, yeah, when you get to college and you look around and you're like, guys, we're babies. Why is everybody already
how are
like
you running a newspaper?
Doing stuff? Aren't we babies?
They're so smart people, or just determined people that knew what they wanted or something. But anyway, we're in college. So college is where sophomore year passes, and then I joined a fraternity.
Yes.
And
so let's talk about that.
So
why did you join a fraternity? Like what made
friends
you?
Friends of friends were in it. Good friends were in it from the dorms. They were like, hey, you should come around because everyone's always recruiting. And I did. And I kind of liked it. And again, I'm coming off of high school where I didn't do enough in my head. And I was like, so for the real world, I want to be in everything possible. So the way I approach college is kind of relentless, the way I approach everything. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to be in everything possible that I'm interested in. So I was in the Badger Herald, Delta Tau Delta fraternity. I was in humorology, which was writing a musical with the fraternity people, where a sorority and a fraternity met up, and that was the main thing I got into, which we could get into.
Yeah,
I was
we will.
A personal finance club for a while. I was on UW homecoming committee. UW homecoming committee, which people make as their only club because it's so involved. I'm telling you, Andy, I was in 9 things because my school stuff wasn't that interesting. So I was like, I'm going to do like these other things because I'm going to have the best resume ever. I was in everything.
Yeah.
And then I started getting this idea that like, if I'm going to be in politics, you got to be in everything. You got to know So I like just kept.
I never understood people in high school or in college who wanted to be like on things like homecoming committee or like student council or whatever, but you've said it for you. It was like that is where like the parties were sourced.
Now that I realize, well, I guess I can just say this now. Now that I realize like I'm an alcoholic and have tons of that in my family, I realized that the partying and looking for all those groups was linked to, and looking for new groups and new groups and new parties was just because I love drinking and I love partying so much.
What do you think you loved so much about it?
Well, having learned now that I am on a high dose of Lexapro to calm anxiety and have major wake up moments.
Well, and you also haven't had anything to drink in
6 years.
Yeah.
Something like that. What was the question though about?
What do you think you liked so much about drinking?
it was like a miracle drug of like, I don't need to think about anything. I could be confident. But the type of confidence that drinking gives you is like asshole, douchebag confidence.
Yeah.
So that is when sort of darkness started to come in college, like sophomore, junior year, when like the drinking would turn into terrible hangover every time I did anything while drunk. Sometimes I was an asshole. Sometimes probably wasn't.
Sometimes you just peed where you weren't supposed to pee.
Yeah, like I pee in a fridge, you know? And then that's when it started to get scary because I'm blacking out all the time. And everyone blacked out like freshman year. But when you're blacking out like all of college and closing down bars and you seem to have no turn-off switch for drinking, it started to feel scary.
I mean, like we partied pretty hard at Vassar, but it wasn't until I went to the state of Wisconsin that I really understood.
Oh my God. Drinking culture,
drink.
It's a lot.
Seriously.
I would drink like 12 beers a night. That's like a normal Miller Lights. That's like water.
I would be dead.
Or just like pound in shots and then go to the bars and people are just ordering rounds. All like it was crazy. And like kind of everyone did it, but I was definitely on the higher end and I found people who also were on the higher end. Yeah,
because you wanted to keep
who
doing
would just keep
that,
or join groups with people who were partying. So I'd always have a
party.
party.
The other thing too is it's not ever, when you're at that age, like there are adults telling you it's a bad thing, but like in a like
barely
in more of a way of like they just don't want us to party kind of way. Like they don't want us to be like rowdy. They don't want us to like, or it's because like the drinking age is 21. It's not because like people are like, hey, you're going down a dangerous path that's gonna like possibly ruin your life. Like that. So, that wasn't really the warning.
No, it was just like, why is Jim weird? Why can't I handle? And then I think because I was so spread out, I basically fractured every friend group or like a lot of my friend groups. Like there were pieces of most of my friend groups where like I wasn't around enough and then started fracturing it because I was so committed to so many things that I was never in one place.
Yeah.
Literally physically.
You were always disappointing someone.
And I started to feel that too, compounded with like drinking and depression and anxiety that started building there. And then like coming out of college, I guess I can just kind of fast forward. There's tons of stories, but we don't have all
Well, if you feel comfortable, one of the stories that I found interesting that I heard when we were recording one of our first podcasts years ago.
Yeah.
You were talking about a time that you went to confession.
I talked about how my sort of last moment with Catholicism, which I thought I was done with it. I'm like, I'm in college, fuck it. But you have that guilt and it builds up. And I remember like, having a moment where I like went back to church weirdly for a few weeks or something and did a confession about like being a bad boy.
You were like, I've been drinking, being a bad boy. I've been a bad boy.
And it didn't do anything for me. And that was officially my like moment where I kind of cried after that.
Yeah,
like,
you said you
sat
on a hill and cried because you were like, confession didn't
do it.
work.
And I was like, okay, this was it. This was my last hurrah of like believing this or having any connection to it.
Yeah.
And things kind of were dark around that time with drinking still. Anyway.
But you still had a lot of fun in college and you did stuff. I feel like you discovered your creative side that had always been there.
We'll talk about this now. So joining Humorology, which was like the thing I didn't even know it existed. They wanted every fraternity and sorority would always like pitch the people in the house to be in this. And they're like, hey, it's a musical. Our house was really good at it. And some really talented musical type people. Some people hated that we were so into that and not into the fraternity stuff. But my thought was like, I'm literally only in this fraternity now to do this thing with my friends. So I'm just going to
So can you explain like what Humorology was exactly?
Yeah. So it's actually like crazy how much work we put into it for what it was. It was like a 20-minute, but like really well produced mini musical parody where all the songs were parodies and all the scenes were written to like sort of connect an original idea. So like, for instance, one of ours was like a parody sort of thing where we used Disney characters to tell a story of like the Warner Brothers wanting vengeance on the Disney kingdom, and me and Boz, my friend, played the Warner Brothers who came in
green top hats
and wreaked havoc on Disneyland, and we made these fake sort of relationships between the characters and a whole plot.
I remember when you first told me about this, you were like, it's not online, you're not going to find it. And I found it and I watched part of it because I was just like so excited to see you performing.
Like the style of Humorology is just like yell, screaming, in your face like variety show.
I mean, it was the same with like sketch comedy in college. So
it was super fun, but the infrastructure around it was wild. So people were really into it.
They took it seriously.
Took it super seriously, wanted to win, wanted to keep secret what they were doing to the other.
And it was for charity, but like...
it really wasn't. Especially when I was there. I think they've since gotten a much better fundraising arm. But when we were there, it was pretty much just to like compete.
Bragging rights.
But yeah, we did well. And I was on the like board. That's weird because this is actually a good way to segue. But this reminds me of something we do have to go back to, which was like my Republican moment.
Yeah.
It's so funny to look back at now, like, because where I came from, it's like a very big part of my like political origin story.
Sure.
So like, I don't even know the specific dates, like sophomore, junior. So I'm in poli-sci and I'm like, well, I should get an internship too, because like everyone's saying you got to intern in politics up at the Capitol. Capitol's literally like on campus essentially.
Yeah.
So I could just walk up there with 1 or 2 of my days a week and get like an internship on my schedule or on my resume.
Yeah, UW is like right next to the Capitol building.
And I was like, Capitol building? Oh, fuck yeah, I'll work there. So I was like poking around and I ended up just asking my dad if he knew any of the people, and he knew Jeff Fitzgerald, who was a Republican from my district, and he made a call.
Rep?
Yep, representative. He made a call or an email or something, and then I emailed too, and they were like, sure, like we know you from the district, like come on up. And I literally just sat at a computer mostly and shot the shit with the guys. It's hard to describe this, but I didn't really understand the difference between Democrats and Republicans. All my life, my parents were just Republicans or just kind of barely talked about politics, and everyone around me was Republican. So I just thought that was who you voted for and who so that's why I didn't know anything like I know now. So I was just in an office with Jeff Fitzgerald, and he was like the speaker of the house, so he's pretty prominent. So I kind of saw the machinations. That was interesting, but I didn't really know anything that was going on. I do remember them like intentionally putting conservative sites on my bookmarks. They put the Drudge Report, so if anyone knows, like on my like as the main thing that popped up, which is hilarious to me because it's like conservative Breitbart sort of rag almost, like a little above that. Like
you
that was
open Safari and that's the first thing.
Like basically wasn't Safari, it was like a, you know, because it's the government, it was a computer that barely worked. Like a gateway. I think it literally was a gateway. So I was working there, and then they were like, hey, so Jim, if you really want to like try politics, you should take a semester off when there's an election cycle when they're in college and help with the campaign. And I was like, I'll think about it. And then I thought about it more or whatever, and I did it. Actually, what happened was I worked for a summer while I was working at the Terrace and at the Republican office, where they had me. I was working for like the state Republican Party in an office. I barely had any tasks. The main project I had was making a brochure of all the representatives that they could hand out at a banquet with a little info on each one. Like, this is the type of shit I'm doing. Like, I'm not like out there really pounding the pavement for Republicans. I don't even know what they stand for, really. Yeah. I just know that they're like the good guys from my dad, and I'm working for them now.
Right.
It's really how I thought about it. And I wanted to learn about politics, and I just thought, I'm going to be in politics, so I got to meet politicians or like go get an internship. I wasn't really thinking about the issues as much as I was the job.
Well, also like things were different.
Sort of. But
politically sort of at that time. Yeah. I mean, I had a similar thing, just the opposite upbringing of like, everyone we knew were Democrats. My parents are Democrats. We were just liberal, progressive people, but like I didn't really understand what the difference was, other than like my parents thought Republicans were bad people. Yeah,
I worked for them, and I took off the semester after working at the office during the summer, and they're like, yeah, you could take off a whole semester and like campaign on the real trail. So I was like, okay. And again, like, who am I campaigning for? Random farmers and like small reps in Wisconsin that are Republicans. Probably should have looked into what they actually fucking stood for. Didn't even think about this because I'm in my maybe not even 20, like 20 something yet. So like, yeah, it's just kind of weird. Like, but like I needed to learn this stuff, like who they were, see who they were, to like know who they were, which is actually what happened. So yeah, it was like a good election cycle, but for the Republicans. But I traveled all over the state of Wisconsin, pretty much just knocking on doors, and I hated it because again, I'm clinically anxious, and I'm not even really that confident about my candidates that I like them, and I'm knocking on doors. You don't really know. And we have a list of people that are probably going to be okay with getting their door knocked on because they've shown some sort of Republican interest, but I'm still scared as hell that like someone's going to yell at me, and they did.
Did they?
Oh yes.
Did anybody like threaten? Like,
get the fuck out of
my property. Yeah. Oh my god.
Oh yeah. So like I guess it strengthens your skin a little bit, but sometimes I would be out because I was just like a hired hand. They would send me off to little town in the middle of nowhere, and I was like the only guy coming in to help. And
you were driving out there?
Yep. In my mom's old Buick.
Oh my goodness.
One time I got pulled over by a cop in a random place, and she followed me off the highway without turning on her lights and followed me all around a small town because I was like, why is this cop following me? Finally I pulled over. She pulled over and was like, hey, you were going pretty fast on the highway there. This was like 20 minutes after I pulled off the road. And I was like, you were following me the whole time? And then I had like Ron Johnson and weird Republican stickers. And so she let me go. Because I was, not even joking. she made a comment about like, well, you're on the good side or something.
That's bleak.
Yeah.
That's so bleak. Oh, that's so bleak.
I had a lot of those moments.
So take me through, if you can, you remember like what, because you changed your mind about like where you stood on politics, mainly just because you like became more aware.
If I had to say, it would probably be meeting people, gay people, people of color, people of different beliefs, and realizing they were my friends. And realizing these people had policies that directly ran counter to things they believed in. And then it started getting me questioning, wait, why do my friends not think this? And I'm sitting here and like drunkenly trying to defend Republicans because like that's who I work for. Yeah. Until I, and again, this is in college.
And you had other friends who were like, they suck. And like, here's why.
Yeah, and friends I loved who would battle. And like, we did that for fun.
Yeah.
Like on issues and get drunk and talk late into the night about stupid shit. I eventually came around to it because I'm like a curious person who did want to know what policies my politicians were actually for.
I mean, something I've always thought about you, because I'm always very impressed with this in the sense that I had the benefit of growing up with, progressive parents, and like obviously Democrats have their issues.
Oh, yes.
But I grew up surrounded by overall pretty progressive people, both in my family and outside of my family.
And like, I'm telling you, I didn't even really have the idea of what progressive meant.
No, I know.
I didn't know there was another side, or that the other side was bad, really even. I knew like my parents could roll their eyes at Bill Clinton for being like a sexual predator or whatever, but like that type of stuff. But like not like, we hate Democrat. Like it wasn't...
Well, and there wasn't that much friction. I just never understood really what was going on in politics. But what I was going to say is like, I never had to go through a moment of like, oh, the political tone that I grew up with maybe is something that I don't agree with. I think that speaks to your character quite a bit. And I've told you this before, but it's like, it's kind of extraordinary to find a person who like completely flipped their viewpoint because they were just like, oh yeah, I learned and I got smarter and I got more aware and decided that like just because it was what I grew up with and what I was exposed to, like doesn't need to be how I feel about it.
Yeah, that was a big learning because I felt so much guilt about being a Republican for a long time. I was in fucking college and didn't know anything, and now I thought about it and I don't want to be that for the rest of my life. Like right after that, I was like, even in college still, I like started turning left and was like, oh yeah, I don't believe this.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was weird. Then that was weird because I was off by a semester from all my friends for graduating. So I still had people I knew around campus and younger people I was friends with from my fraternity. So that was fine. But
so you did like a winter graduation?
Yeah, I did a winter. I did one extra semester after that or whatever. Had to do a couple extra classes. And that was when like depression and anxiety really set in because now we're getting near end of college and I don't know what I'm going to do. I just did a whole political thing that bombed out that I did not like and didn't want to be involved with. And all those connections aren't really worth anything if I'm not doing politics.
Right.
And so like now I don't have a plan. And I interned the summer before my senior year at Starcom in Chicago, which was a advertising company.
Starcom always sounds to me like the like evil fake corporation in like a Marvel movie.
Some of the guys from the Republicans are the ones who like were my interview references. They got me that job to like jump out of the politics.
And you did not, that was not a good time in your life.
No, well, the internship was.
Oh, because you did an internship
in Chicago for the most part, because it was a bunch of people from all over the country who were trying to get jobs in Chicago after college and like were down at Columbia College dorms. That's when my friend Fager visited for the summer and we saw Avicii live at the Congress, which is like kind of an epic concert to have seen because he's no longer with us and he didn't perform that many shows. Yeah. That was cool. You know, like that was right in the pocket of like EDM and drinking and partying. And so that summer was pretty fun. But my internship at the actual place sucked. Like they almost had nothing for me to do. So I hated that. I remember for my final project, we had to do one. Everyone else did PowerPoints. I just wrote something down and read it off the sheet of paper.
Because you were like, I don't
want to do this. Yeah. I don't care. So I just wrote like a little like report and everyone like thought it was weird. And I moved on because I was like, I don't want to make a PowerPoint. I'm not going to spend my time doing that. I'm done with this for the summer.
Yeah.
And so I like wrote something and then I remember like someone jokingly like, oh, we're going to read your manifesto, like some higher up. Like they basically just like thought it was weird the whole summer. And so I was like, fuck that. But then as I'm freaking out after I finally graduate, I got a job with them. I came to Chicago. Well, like Humo was still finishing up and I was still on the board of Humo. So like I basically wasn't around for any of that and felt like a piece of shit because I'm like starting my job and I'm not helping. And so they're annoyed with me because I like left. So like, but I needed to because I felt so much anxiety about getting a job that I felt like I had to. So I moved down here to Starcom, hated the job. And then when I left that job, it was like 6 months after, and I was freaking out because here I am like drinking every weekend with the only money I have, like a lot, and I barely any money to even like get to work and have food because they paid me like $30,000 or $35,000 to start, which was insane for living to Chicago even that long ago. So I could barely live, and I ended up leaving and then going back home. Like I bombed out of the city. I didn't take any comedy stuff. But I had taken like one Second City writing class right before I left just to kind of like see that it existed. And I was like, maybe I could do something like that. I went home and that was like, felt like I had failed at life because I moved to my first job in Chicago and I left after 6 months.
We're talking about, this is what, like 2012?
Yeah.
So like we've talked about this, but you were living in Lakeview and you were living not that far from where I was living in Lakeview. So like, I feel like you and I probably
walk by each other on the street. We probably walk by each other,
living different lives, but probably the same level of just like anxiety and fear of failure while also feeling like it's too late. I've already failed.
Yeah, failed. Like I bombed out of my job. I'm afraid of it,
but I'm also
when
in the process of doing it. When I left that
job, I was like crying at work. I hated it so much. I had given my 2 weeks and then like I came back in for the next week, like the first day, and I just left at lunch.
Because you were like, I can't take it anymore.
And I didn't feel good about it, but I literally left at lunch and then they like called me and I was like, yeah, I'm not coming back.
Was it because you found the work unfulfilling or you were just overwhelmed all of it?
No, mostly work unfulfilling. I did not know what they wanted me to do. No one would tell me. They didn't have really a job for me yet.
So you would just like go into your office and you were like, I don't know what.
I'm like, all this energy to do something in the world and I'm sitting here and I about went insane because I was like, I looked at the org chart and I was like, none of these jobs are jobs I want. Why am I here? So I left immediately.
And you were also probably like, well, what am I going to do with my life?
No. Also, the guys I liked who worked there were like the creatives, and there were not that many of them. We were like in ad sales, placement, which I didn't have a passion for placement of ads. It's funny, I went to school for ads. I hate advertising. I think it's like maybe like the bane of the existence of America.
Yeah.
Like the fact that I went to school for it is pretty funny. Like, and chose that over journalism is pretty funny.
So you go back to Beaver Dam after 6 months in Chicago at the beginning of your professional life. What now?
Dude, this was like deep depression. I'm sitting in the basement watching How I Met Your Mother. I watched the entirety of the series, never watched an episode before, in the basement. And like, I don't know, I think everyone probably just thought I was like going through it. I was like writing movie scripts, any creative idea I had, but like really depressed, felt terrible. Eventually, I like dug myself out of that depression somehow. Got back to Madison working at Ale Asylum, which was a brewery. So yeah, put the alcoholic at a brewery, or myself. And so I just like drank
know yet.
a ton of IPAs, just blackout, probably driving home from work too drunk, fucked up shit. Overall, pretty fun. I remember having the thought I could work at a brewery my whole life and like probably enjoy it and be drunk all the time. But like, yeah, it was definitely kind of problematic. And I knew that just going back to Madison, working at a brewery wasn't my life, probably.
Right. But you were like ready to at least get out of your parents' house and like try again.
Yeah. And so, but I didn't know that many people. I knew the work people and then like people from my fraternity and young people from college that were still around. So I didn't really want to be that guy that's like hanging out with college friends still. So after a year back in Madison, dabbling around, that's where I worked at that farm for a while. I was really going through it. I was like vegetarian. I was working at a farm.
You were trying on things, a bunch of different things.
Yeah. And in retrospect, I'm just trying on things, and I liked a lot of those things, and some of those stories are funny now. But that's when I finally like worked at Requisite Video, which was this little company where I met like one of my current best friends in the world, Max, at this little company. And I wasn't even there for that long because they also didn't have anything for me to do, even though they gave me a job, and like were really confusing to work for. So I ended up leaving there and then going back to Beaver Dam again and using that as a launching pad to come back to Chicago finally, once and for all, to do improv and comedy. Because like at some point in there, I was like, well, I do like comedy. I always liked Humo. Why don't I like actually try this in Chicago? And so then that was my goal. Talk
to me about your experience of coming back to Chicago, because when you came back to Chicago, you lived in the apartment that I met you in, which was that building, and that apartment was wild.
So it's this 10-story building in Uptown. It's still there on Sheridan, which is like a main drag. And I found it on Craigslist because I didn't know anything about Chicago rental, really. I just wanted the cheapest place. And it wasn't even that cheap. It was...
Not for what it was.
No, studio, but it was on the 10th floor, so that was cool. But it was like a box. And I had like no furniture, an air mattress. My dad dropped me off, and here I am just in Chicago. I'm signed up for Second City class. That's it. I have a job interview at a juice bar in the West Loop, a college, 2 degrees, all this stuff. And I got an interview at a juice bar for $9 an hour. That's where I end up fucking working. It's in the West Loop. So I'm taking like 2 trains to get there. I don't know what my brain was thinking. I was like, I can't get a job outside of my apartment. I just have to take whatever I get on Craigslist. Here I am serving smoothies. That sucked too. But I was working like that job and starting improv and going to shows every night, like free shows, cheap shows. There was a show right next to my apartment called The Paper Machete at the Green Mill, which is a classic Chicago bar that is still there. They do the show every Saturday. It's the coolest like live lit show I've ever seen. I walked in there by myself like the first weekend I got dropped off and like wanted to like cry because it was like the perfect thing. I was like,
it's a very
this
cool
show is like a walk from me. And so then I knew like, okay, I'm in the right place. But then the improv classes and anxiety around that started. So like, you know it, like taking all the classes, trying to get on teams and stuff while battling again intense anxiety.
Yeah,
and
it's
trying
like
to be on stage.
You go from not really knowing anything about the improv community to immediately being like,
I have to do everything.
I have to find a way to like.
And remember, I'm the guy who joined 19 groups in college.
Yes.
So like my brain is like, solve the problem by joining everything.
Yeah.
So
you were doing a lot.
I was doing Second City. Eventually I realized, ooh, this is only one thing. I got to do IO if I want to do
That's the other
improv.
racket. It's not just like you come to Chicago and realize improv is king. It's like you come to Chicago, realize improv is king, and everyone is going to tell you that you have to take 3 times as many classes as you're
because you got to
taking.
pay for all of them.
Yeah.
It's a scheme and a scam. But so I did A through E Second City. That was pretty fun. Simultaneously, I started IO A through E.
One. I think it
through
was
8 or 7. 7B, 5?
5B.
5B. 5. Well, but then there were like B's and A's, so there was like 7.
Yeah, but your 5Bs were your performance
So
shows. I don't know what it is now.
There was a whole almost year, maybe over a year program at IO where you learned everything about improv, long form, and it was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I made it onto not the team that got to perform,
like the understudy team,
but the understudy team, which my class was probably like 50, and like 8 people got picked for each team.
Yeah.
So that was cool to get on it. But then after one run, I didn't make it back. And then I was kind of done with IO.
If you spend your whole year paying for classes either at Second City or IO or what have you, and you are not offered one of the few coveted spots, whether
you're done.
Your life is over. Yeah. That's how it felt, at least.
Because I've already come here through my whole life away or whatever to come do comedy, and now I'm not even on I can't even make but they set it up that way, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. They just tell you there is, and that you have to go through these systems. However, I did learn a ton. I'm not the guy who gets on stage and then now I am, like I've done that. Like,
of course.
I've been in front of hundreds of people performing something I did not know before I stepped out there, and like I did it, even though I was terrified. And
you were very good, which is how you being good at improv is how we even met in the first place.
Yeah, because one of my first and only team that I was on was first team that I got on really like in the city was at Mint at MCL with Julia. You saw me do a show there because you were around MCL, as you said in your story, and then you were already performing and like higher up there, so they let you be a coach.
Yeah, so when the theater still existed, there was also this thing called Mint, which was music improv night. And it was honestly it was a really good opportunity in that it was every 4 months, a new group of 4 coaches would pick 4 teams based on auditions. And it was like training ground for both people coaching and also for obviously performers. And so all you had to do was pay for rehearsal space, and you were able to get like reps in both being coached in rehearsals and also performing. And it was also just, of all the improv communities in Chicago at that time, MCL was like a pretty welcoming
I felt
space.
welcomed there and nowhere else. Like at IO, where I was taking class and giving them all my money, I felt nothing.
Yeah.
But at MCL, like I was on a team and immediately embraced.
It's because it was mainly musical improvisers.
So I did like a lot of improv, tried out for every team. And I distinctly remember trying out for a team.
Yeah.
And then after that, riding up to Northwestern to go to therapy.
Yeah.
And talking about how anxious I was to make that team and like improv in my life.
There's nothing worse than an improv audition. I've said many times I'd rather be chased by a wild animal than do an improv audition. And I mean that. I literally, before many improv auditions, I've literally thought to myself, if they were like, you can be on the team if we just let a tiger chase you for 5 minutes and you manage to survive instead of having to do the improv audition.
Let's bring on
I would have been
tiger.
like, where is he?
Siegfried and Roy, I got you.
Where is he? So anyway, Jim, you did one season of this like 4-month music improv team, and then I saw you perform on like the closing night of that 4 months. And then I happened to be coaching the next season. And I saw you again at the audition. And I mean, do you want to tell your experience of it, or should I just keep going?
I think I saw you after I didn't get on a team after one of the last nights of that current season. We were at the bar everyone went to, the karaoke bar, and you saw me there or whatever.
Yeah.
And we were talking, you were like, oh, you're really good or something. And I was like, yeah, I didn't make a team. And you're like, what? I wanted you on my team, but like our schedules didn't align.
Yeah,
and I was
so
like, I don't have a schedule really. So like, if you want to put me on.
Everybody filled out an index card of their like availability. And I remember watching you audition, and I still have the sheet of paper that I was taking notes on. I saved it. And I literally wrote Jim O'Connell, and I put a star next to your name. And then when I like made a list of like, here are the people I definitely want on my team, like you were on my list. And I don't remember much about the audition looking back, but I do remember, I swear to God, you were wearing a purple shirt. You to this day are like, I've never owned a purple shirt. But
I might have. I don't know.
I just remember I had seen you perform once. And then you came in audition, and I was like, this guy's really, really good. I definitely want him on my team. And then when it came to picking the teams, I realized that you just didn't have the right availability for when I wanted to do rehearsals. And I was like, that sucks, but somebody else will snap him up. And then for whatever reason,
we ran each other
happen.
at the bar. I mentioned it, and then I switched my schedule. And
I saw you across the way, and it was kind of like out of my nature to just like go talk to somebody I did not know, because I didn't know the friend you were with either. But I remember thinking like, he's really talented and he should know that. Like somebody, if I were in the situation where like I gave a good audition because I thought you had given an objectively good audition, I would want somebody to tell me, hey, you did a good job. It just didn't work out for whatever reason. Because being on the receiving end of so many audition situations, it's hard. You know logically in your head, like this probably I don't need to internalize this because it may have had nothing to do with like my actual talent, but you can't help it.
Yeah.
You're like, I literally did what I thought I was good at, and they decided no.
Yeah.
So I was like, I think I should go tell him. And I remember doing that. And then I remember you immediately being like, I can do Sundays. I can do whatever. Like I can change my schedule. It doesn't matter at all. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
I really wanted to be on a team.
And then I like checked with the person who was in charge of everything, and they were like, I don't fucking care. Yeah, of course.
Sure. Yeah, that was great. That's funny you said that, because I remember that, and that's a really nice story. But also when I was finishing IO, my favorite teacher from the experience, Noah Gregoropoulos, who is no longer with us.
I know.
Just like a nice, funny ass
guy.
Just
a gem
very
of a
original.
Person, yeah.
Really cynical and goofy. He came up to me at the bar when he saw that I wasn't on the main team and like sat down with me, like not that many years or whatever before he died, like, and was like, you should keep doing this. Like it didn't work out this time, but like keep going. And like I'm just coming around to potentially in the next few months doing an improv set again for the first time in like
meanwhile I'm like, and I never want, I'm kidding, I don't.
My friend Kevin from Fantasy and I are kicking around,
kicking around.
Too prov.
And then I coached you on that team for 4 months, and I specifically remember thinking, this guy doesn't like me. I specifically remember thinking, this guy finds me overwhelming. I am too much for this person. And he's a quieter soul, more of a still waters run deep kind of person. And he does not like me. And then you randomly sent me an email you replied to like a scheduling email I sent, and you were like, hey, I just wanted to let you know, like, I'm really enjoying these rehearsals and the performances, like, and you're doing a good job coaching, and it just like, it feels like I'm getting to take like a free class. And I was like, this is coming from Jim? Like, I thought Jim didn't even.
Yeah, it's because I have a lot of anxiety, or did at the time.
Well, and my anxiety takes the form of like, I need everyone to like me a lot.
Yeah.
And yours takes the form of like, I'm just going to sort of like retreat into myself a little bit. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but.
No, definitely.
Yeah. And then from there, it was like, there was a rule about like, there was no fraternizing between like people who were teammates or obviously like coaches. And to be honest with you, that was not on my mind, like at all.
I don't really even know how we started dating, really. I think we like hung out a little.
The team, all of us went to like an end of season brunch one day.
Yeah.
And you and I happened to
go back together on
the
bus.
The same bus. And you turned to me at one point and you were like, we should hang out. Like, what's your phone number? And I was like, oh, what? Okay. And then I think we went to see Chappie. Do you remember that weird robot movie, Chappie?
Oh yeah, Chappie. That's our first movie, yeah.
I guess. Maybe. I don't know. I'm actually like, to be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, and then I just remember you coached my like small independent improv team, and that's when like we.
And then you guys got too good, and I was like, I have nothing to offer you. Like, you guys are good.
Yeah,
I don't
it was
have
really
any
fun.
Good notes.
We did a 3-person show that we put on by ourselves in Chicago.
Yeah,
and that ran for quite a while. Like,
it was very good.
Or once a month, every other week, or once a month, or we would do a run of every week on a Wednesday night, like in a small theater, and just get all of our friends' teams and friends out and like put on a show. That was pretty fun. Around this time, I'm working at Reverb now. I finally got a job doing video and stuff, which I'd been like learning since Madison. I somehow got that job.
Yeah.
And worked on the video team at Reverb for just doing resumes. And I was super anxious that whole time too, because I didn't really know. I was learning so much.
You were.
My boss
taught
a
lot.
me. My boss and like coworker taught me so much shit because I didn't really have the film background, but I like knew storytelling. I knew cameras. I didn't really know like everything.
Well, you're self-taught at a lot of stuff, and that was like the first time that like other people were teaching you, but it was also your boss and your coworker. So it's not like you were in like an academic setting. It was like, we're going to teach you this, but you need to turn it around and like execute right now.
So like my job then basically became like learning everything after work that I was like doing at work, and then just trying until I finally like after a couple of years felt good there.
Yeah.
But after like 3 years, almost the 3-year mark, I left there to freelance, which is what I'm doing now. And like, and the pandemic and the whole slew of things. Anyway, what I wanted to get to is like more recently and like looking how I've been doing a lot of looking back through this, because I got on anxiety meds by finally talking to a doctor. And like, if people are listening to this, like, it's hard to describe. Hopefully, maybe if some of you have had this experience, like the wake up of getting on anxiety meds and realizing before that, like, my family history of alcoholism has been insane.
Yeah.
In the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Like the comfort and the confidence return, like, it's honestly like I've cried a lot about it and like gotten emotional. I'm past that at this point a little bit for right now, at least, where I'm just kind of more like, how the fuck was I living, man?
Yeah.
How did I even get through that? And so many things made so much more sense, especially the over drinking.
We drank in very different ways. And like a lot of my anxiety led to me not getting blackout drunk in college because I was afraid of becoming like a health class video cautionary tale.
Oh, for sure.
Also, I was having my own issues with food where like the calories in alcohol were a problem for me, which I had that too,
but I was drinking all the time.
Bleak.
Like, I can drink 12 beers. It's only so do the calories.
And you're like, I just won't eat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I did a lot of not eating and
yeah.
just drinking for the night.
Yes. So I had my own weird relationship with it, but I remember, and this is not a criticism, this is just an observation. Like, I remember nights where we would be like out with friends having fun, and like the event of the night would be over. It's like, 1 or 2 in the morning. Everybody's like packing up and going home. You and I think we're winding down. And then like you all of a sudden, when we're like steps from our apartment, is like, let's go into this bar and have another drink. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Right now?
I just had no stopping point.
And like your eyes would look.
Oh, crazy. Yeah.
It was the most intense I have ever seen. And I would be like, all right, let's go. And then like you would immediately throw up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would always push it to that limit.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
It was because I was like, once I started, it was just not going to stop until I threw up.
I think that was when like that started to dawn on me, because you had already sort of been toying with like, maybe I have a problem.
I'd quit for like 6 months.
Yeah.
Whatever.
You'd quit for a while and you'd be like, I feel good. I feel like I'm in a different place. I feel like I can approach it differently now. And then inevitably it would be 2 a.m. and I would be like, we're winding down. We're going home. And you would be like, oh, just 1 more, like maybe 2 more. And like, it would usually end with like some sort of puking or feeling horrible. And then the next 3-4 days, you would be like miserable.
Hell.
Yeah.
Anxiety. Hell.
And like, I never judged that. It was mainly like, you seem to be really struggling with it, in that you seem to want to have a better relationship with alcohol, but you couldn't figure out how to do it while still drinking it.
Yep.
Is really kind of what it was.
And so,
yeah,
that was great. But then, as I moved on, worked at Reverb, freelancing's been, I don't want to get into it right now. We're feeling good now because we're like making our own stuff, and that's been the most positive.
We're
I've felt
stable. We're in an apartment that we love. We're both like, everybody could be making more money, I'm sure, at this point, but we are keeping our heads above water, and also like going whole hog on a creative project
and on our mental health. And like the fact that I finally got on these meds, even though I thought about it probably like my whole life, that I probably needed something, and that I was masking essentially a huge anxiety with tons of alcohol, or at least part of it. Like, I obviously have the genes, but then like the anxiety too made it so easy to.
Can you talk about, if you're comfortable with it, being at your PCP and taking the like little anxiety quiz?
So I finally walk in there and I'm like, hey, like, can I just like take an anxiety test, or how do you do that? Like,
how do you establish
that? And he was like, oh yeah, for sure. Like, it's right on my iPad now. And he just gave me a list of questions, and I think I failed every one like the worst possible. And he was like, oh, like just from like this like list of questions in the room, he was able to be like, yeah, we got to get you on that. And I was so thankful that he like was just like very, like you said, immediate, like, yeah, you should try that. And then like took 10 milligrams, like 6 months, 5 more to 15. And then like I did kind of have a week where I was like, holy shit, man.
Yeah, yours kind of hit you all at once.
Every day, because you start realizing like how much anxiety and stress you were living with every day.
Do you want to take a minute?
No. I'm all right. And then to like be like, oh shit, I got another chance to do more.
Yeah, it can be hard it's hard for me too to look back at like how anxious I used to be, how compulsive I used to be, and feel like I lost time.
So much time, yeah.
But I'm also a pretty big believer, and this is also Zoloft speaking, but I'm a pretty big believer at this point in my life that things happen when they happen.
Yeah.
And like, I was not ready to arrive at a place where I was willing to even like have the conversation about going on meds until I did it.
Yeah.
Like, there are a lot of things in my life that I've been kind of a slow burn to, and after the last like decade plus since college, it went from feeling like, oh, somebody just started a race and now I'm racing and I can't stop racing. And now it sort of feels like, you know what? I'm going to be able to do things that I want to do, or stop doing things I don't want to do when I'm able to do it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So,
And, you know, so that brings us up to date. How are you feeling now? What's going on now?
Feeling pretty awesome now. We got a fish tank. Actually, I'm moving. Like, I've been pretty like passionately activist-y on like social media and stuff. I'm gonna try to move that over to its own channel with friends and also get some documentary film stuff going and journalism stuff going that I always wished I could have done.
Yeah, revisiting.
Yeah, it's fun to revisit
yourself.
different versions of myself in these last couple of years and be like, I did like that for a reason, and then finding new joy in it without like all the crippling depression. So yeah, it's kind of a lot of new feelings, but same us.
Same us, yeah. This is the first time in my life I'm able to enjoy certain other artistic hobbies without needing them to become something that I am the best at or could be a financially viable. Like, I like to paint because I like to paint. There's no other, I'm not trying to make money off of it. I'm not even trying to necessarily be really good at it, other than I want the thing that I do to look good and so that I like it.
I feel similarly with like kind of wrapping my head around certain things. Like my mom growing up always used to call me relentless.
Yeah.
And I think I've had a lot of like sort of like a thought about that word. Even like, one, it's kind of scary to be relentless when like you can't stop yourself from doing something, but it's also like a superpower when I can get into things. Like I can just learn, like learning all the video stuff, like this is pretty much all self-taught, like going down rabbit holes. So like, because my brain will just lock onto something, that's also good. I just have to like be aware that I'm not.
I have watched you several times be like, I know nothing about this. And then like 2 days later, you're not just like able to do it. You're like intermediate, like level, like better than other people who have been doing.
I just like learning. And so
you get fun. Really focused.
I like learning, teaching, presenting information, making content about it, telling people what's important to me. So like more of that. And then more of our fun podcast as well.
Yes, of course.
All right. Well, if you sat through however long this ended up being.
Well, we're going to edit it down.
Yeah, but it'll be long. Thank you. We're going to enjoy our vacation and be back to work.
We hope you enjoyed getting to know us a little bit better, and that there's stuff in that you can relate to, even if you don't come from the same kind of like artistic backgrounds that we do.
Yeah. And we'll be back with actual research and like planning.
We've been doing our own self-research.
Yeah. And then maybe we'll actually come back to this format occasionally, because now we set up this like shot in the back room.
Unless everyone hates it.
We'll do like our personal chats back here.
Yeah.
All right. Later.
Bye.
do